Beyond the headlines, Jamie Dornan's journey through the quiet moments of love. 1. The life between applause. There is a peculiar silence that follows applause. It comes after the lights dim, after the cameras turn away, after the crowd disperses into taxis and late-night conversations. Jamie learned to recognize that silence early in his career, not as emptiness, but as a kind of reckoning. It was in those moments that the noise of expectation fell away, leaving behind the simple question that mattered more than any review or headline. Who am I when no one is watching? For a long time, the world seemed intent on answering that question for him. They assigned him roles, some flattering, some reductive, some wildly inaccurate. They wrote stories that began and ended at the surface, stories that mistook visibility for intimacy. But Jamie's real life unfolded elsewhere. It unfolded in the soft hours of the morning, when light crept through curtains and Amelia stirred beside him. It unfolded in kitchens and hallways, in quiet drives, in moments so unremarkable they would never be photographed, and yet so essential that without them, nothing else made sense. Amelia never tried to compete with the world's version of him. She had no interest in the spectacle. She was drawn instead to the man who returned home tired, who kicked off his shoes by the door, who sighed as if he'd been holding his breath all day. "You're back," she'd say, not as an observation, but as a welcome. Jamie learned, slowly, that love did not live in grand declarations. It lived in return. 2. Learning the language of stillness. Amelia's presence was a lesson in stillness. She did not rush through her life. She noticed things: the way the light shifted across a room, the cadence of a piece of music, the subtle changes in Jamie's mood when he'd been away too long. Her attention was deliberate, almost reverent, and it invited Jamie to slow down in ways he hadn't realized he needed. In the early days of their relationship, Jamie found this both comforting and unsettling. He was used to momentum, projects stacking on projects, schedules filling before he could catch his breath. Stillness felt unfamiliar, like standing at the edge of something deep. One evening, after a long stretch of work, Jamie came home restless. He paced the living room, phone buzzing with messages he didn't want to answer. Amelia watched him quietly from the sofa. "You don't have to run here," she said gently. Jamie stopped. "I don't know how to switch it off." Amelia patted the space beside her. "Then sit with it." He did. They sat together in silence, the world outside fading to a hum. Jamie could feel his thoughts slowing, settling like dust after a storm. Amelia didn't try to fill the space. She understood that silence wasn't absence, it was presence without performance. That night, Jamie realized something fundamental. Love did not demand that he be extraordinary. It allowed him to be human. 3. The private geography of home. Home, for Jamie and Amelia, was not defined by architecture. It was defined by atmosphere. It was the smell of coffee in the morning, the low murmur of music in the background, the familiarity of shared routines. It was a place where no one asked him to explain himself. When Jamie traveled, he carried that sense of home with him in small, almost talismanic ways. A note Amelia slipped into his bag. A song she sent him that felt like a conversation. A photo that reminded him of something ordinary and precious. Amelia, in turn, learned how to live with absence, not as a void, but as a temporary condition. She did not resent his work, but she did not romanticize the distance either. She treated it as something to be navigated honestly. On late-night calls, Jamie would sometimes apologize for not being there. "You don't have to keep apologizing," Amelia would say. "Just come back when you can." That simple expectation, return, became a compass for Jamie. No matter how far he went, he knew where he was headed. 4. Love without an audience. Fame had taught Jamie to perform even his own emotions. Interviews encouraged tidy narratives, sound bites that flattened complexity into something consumable. Amelia resisted that flattening instinct. She asked questions that didn't have neat answers. She noticed contradictions and accepted them. She understood that love was not a story arc, it was a practice. There were nights when Jamie felt the weight of being seen but not known. On those nights, Amelia would sit with him, her presence grounding. "You don't owe the world clarity," she told him once. "You owe yourself honesty." Jamie carried that advice with him. He began to protect parts of his life, not out of secrecy, but out of respect. He learned that intimacy lost something when it was constantly translated for strangers. Their love grew in that protected space, shaped by moments no one else would ever witness. 5. The strength of ordinary days. The most meaningful days, Jamie discovered, were often the least dramatic. They were days spent running errands, cooking meals, folding laundry. Days marked by small decisions and quiet compromises. Days that asked nothing of him except attention. Amelia found beauty in those days. She treated them not as filler between important events, but as the substance of a shared life. One afternoon, as they worked side by side in the kitchen, Jamie felt a sudden surge of gratitude. "What?" Amelia asked, noticing his expression. "Nothing," he said, smiling. "Everything." She laughed softly. "You're getting sentimental." "Maybe," Jamie replied, "or maybe I'm finally paying attention." 6. Holding each other's silences. There were moments when Amelia retreated into herself, her creative world pulling her inward. Jamie learned to recognize those moments, not as rejection, but as focus. He did not demand access to every part of her. He learned that love did not mean constant closeness, it meant trust. When Amelia struggled, Jamie did not rush to fix things. He listened, he waited, he offered support without insisting on solutions. One night, as Amelia sat quietly, lost in thought, Jamie asked, "Do you want to talk?" Amelia shook her head. "Not yet." Jamie nodded. "I'm here." That was enough. 7. Redefining success. As Jamie's career evolved, so did his understanding of success. He began to measure it not by accolades, but by alignment, by how well his choices reflected the life he wanted to live. He turned down opportunities that would have pulled him too far from home, from Amelia, from himself. These decisions were rarely celebrated. They didn't fit the narrative of relentless ambition, but they felt right. Amelia supported him without pressure. She never framed his choices as sacrifices for her sake. She understood that fulfillment was not a zero-sum game. "You're allowed to want a life," she told him, "not just a career." 8. Weathering the noise together. The world's curiosity never fully receded. Speculation, assumptions, and projections followed them like background static. But Jamie and Amelia learned how to turn down the volume. They established boundaries, both visible and invisible. They chose what to share and what to keep. They trusted each other to hold the center steady. When the noise felt overwhelming, they returned to their rituals. Shared meals, long walks, quiet evenings. These moments anchored them, reminding them of what was real. 9. Love as a living thing. Jamie came to understand love not as a destination, but as a living thing, something that required care, attention, and humility. He learned to apologize when he faltered, to listen when Amelia spoke, to remain curious about her, even after years together. Their bond deepened not through perfection, but through persistence. One evening, as they sat together watching the sky darken, Amelia said, "I like who we are when it's just us." Jamie smiled. "Me too." 10. The quiet legacy. Years from now, Jamie knew, the headlines would fade. Roles would be replaced by newer ones. The noise would move on. What would remain were the quiet moments, the shared glances, the unspoken understandings, the life built gently, deliberately. Jamie rested his head against Amelia's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing. Beyond the headlines, beyond the spectacle, this was the story that mattered. Not a love defined by visibility, but a love sustained by presence. And in that quiet, enduring connection, Jamie found something no spotlight could ever offer. Home.